Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Smoke Signal News, and I am your anchor, the Cyber Behike Sana Gori. This is independent media. You can't get any better here in the Taino Funhouse. No corporate sponsors. Many people might consider me to be liberal. I like to consider myself just to be a common sense realist of what's going on in the world through indigenous eyes. That's right. So I want to start today, March 9th, with Indigenous and Treaty Sovereignty News. Guess what? A delegation of six tribal leaders. Um, it's called the Tribal Six Leaders. Excuse me, correction. The Treaty Six Leaders. They departed today, March 9th, and they went to London to meet with King Charles III. And their goal is to reaffirm that the original treaties are living documents meant to protect future generations of indigenous people, presenting the king with the baby mucklucks as a symbol of that sacred responsibility. Amazing. This is a good. People of indigenous nations are rising up and they're taking their rightful place in history when it comes to sovereignty. Remember, back in the day, there was no borders. We let these European invaders, we let them in. Of course, there was no social media, there was no emails back then in the 1400s and beyond. But man, are we learning our lessons today in 2026. Now, also, there's some legal challenges to sovereignty here in the United States. In Wisconsin, the Lac Duc Flambeau Ojibwe are currently in a high stakes legal standoff with federal authorities over road access on tribal lands. I can't believe this. I can't believe this is an issue with the federal authorities. Access of a road leading to tribal land. How is this an issue? But it is. Now, the outcome could set a major precedent for how much control tribes have over transportation through their reservations. So, here in Wisconsin, we have definitely a situation that is gonna set a precedent how indigenous people have, how much rights they have to their land. Okay, which is actually entrusted to them by the United States of America. At any given time, depending on who the leader is, it hasn't been done. Well, it has been done because a lot of land has been taken away from federally recognized tribes. In the first Trump administration, there was talk of doing this. But let me stay focused on this. This is going to be a major precedent, whatever happens with this court case, because do the tribes have control of their own land when it comes to access to their tribal land through the reservation? It's going to be interesting. Also in Seneca Nation law enforcement in New York, that's right, the great state of New York, the Seneca Nation is actively working to resolve jurisdictional confusion regarding law enforcement on their lands to ensure community safety is managed. Let me repeat this again. To ensure that community safety is managed by indigenous authorities. If it's their land, if it's their nation, they should have the right, okay, to patrol their own land, to let the judicial system on tribal land take effect. In other words, let me repeat that again. Indigenous people who are a sovereign nation, separate from the United States, on their land, have a right to protect, enforce laws. They have a right to enforce their own sense of justice as tribal. Please write in the comment sections if this is confusing, if I have to clarify this. It's very confusing because I'm kind of not used to speaking in these terms. You know, we're used to Congress, Senate, Supreme Court, but tribal nations, federally recognized tribes, they have their own laws, they have their own Supreme Court, they have their own lawyers within the reservation. So this has been a challenge Not just like I mentioned before in Wisconsin, but also in New York. There's issues of self-determination, enforcing their own laws on their own land. So we have to access the roads, access to their own laws. Now, immigration and civil rights. Check this out. An independent court push. That's the topic. A representative, Don Goldman, introduced the Real Courts Rule of Law Act today. Now, this grassroots backed legislation aims to move immigration courts away from the Department of Justice to make them an independent judiciary, theoretically protecting judges and immigrants from political interference. Whoa! Thank you, Dan Goldman. This is a great bill that you're introducing. Real Courts, Rule of Law Act. Man, I hope this passes because this is going to be major to keep away, get it out of the hands of the Department of Injustice right now. We need to protect the judges and the immigrants. In protecting the judges, you're protecting the law, which 90% of the time is these lawsuits against the Department of Justice is being lost. Political interference has to stop. Now, ICE community impact. Local reports from the Yurok tribe, Y-U-R-O-K, I apologize if I'm pronouncing it correctly, and community advocates in Texas, in the great state of Texas, are tracking the hidden toll of recent ICE detentions. Now, advocates are specifically highlighting how these actions are disrupting essential healthcare, such as HIV care within the Latino and the indigenous communities. Imagine that. Once again, there is interference in receiving HIV care. So there is a hidden toll on recent ICE detentions in Texas. So give it up to the Yurok tribe and all the advocates in Texas for sticking up to what's right and not allowing ICE to truly terrorize these communities and the people who suffer from HIV. So, okay, so I'm looking through my notes here. Hold on a second. Okay, so let me talk about the environment. Since indigenous people, Mother Earth needs to be protected no matter what. So within the economy, you always have the environment hand in hand, the two E's. So there's been talk today about alternative farm energy. In New York, which I live in, local dairy farmers are leading a shift towards methane digesters. What does this mean? While corporate news like CNN, Fox, and so on, often focuses on oil prices, rural independent news, okay, this is what I researched today, is tracking how these localized biofuel projects are helping. Check this out. Let me repeat this again. Localized biofuel projects are helping family farms diversify their income and reduce their carbon footprint simultaneously. Isn't that amazing? If we could eliminate carbon footprint, the seventh generation will thank us so much. So give it up to the rural movement in these rural independent news. They're tracking it, how localized biofuel projects are in fact helping family farms. Very important. Okay, let's get to the international front. The Iran war economic impact. Listen, there's no way around it. All our actions in the political realm, it's always focused on the economy, especially here in the United States and all world economies as well. So, once again, while the mainstream media is focusing on military strategy, folks like myself, we're trying to focus on independent analysis. Um, and what does that mean? We're trying to look at how the conflict, this war in Iran, is turning the energy affordability crisis into a calamity. It's beyond a crisis. I know you've been looking at the news, or maybe through TikTok or Facebook, whatever. You see these oil tankers blowing up in Iran due to U.S. and Israel missiles and rockets, you name it. But this is causing an energy affordability crisis. Put the X on crisis. It's a calamity. Okay? And who's suffering the most? Low income Americans um, who depend on energy, low cost energy. Okay? So basically, we're being robbed. So when you get your oil prices bill, when you get your Con Edison bill or your local utilities wherever you live, when you get your bill, it's going to be extremely high due to this war in Iran. And we've been hearing this in the news for a long time about affordability. Let's see what happens. Um, yeah, so basically, there's a lot of stuff going on in the native world here in America, Turtle Island. I want to as I get better with this, I'm not trained as an anchor media person, but wherever I look, corporate media is twisting, and some of them are trying their best to report the news without corporate influence. But hey, I got no corporate influence right here. I'm just trying to present the news as I see it through my own eyes as indigenous, and you judge me. You write down the comments. But I'm really happy about these these tribal leaders that went to England today, March 9th. And they called the Treaty 6 leaders. You can look it up on just Google it. Treaty 6 leaders. They went to England. You know, England before the Revolutionary War, they had a lot of influence on the native tribes, and they divided a lot. You know what they call Columbus kind of practice. He was the first one to practice this in Americas. Um, you seek the alliances, and you try to divide them. You know, you try to divide them as much as you can, so they can fight against one another. So now we're going back in history. Hopefully, King Charles III. I'll keep you updated. See what happened with this meeting. Because the bottom line is indigenous people were always trying to protect the future generations, the seventh generation. Para toda mi gente, boricua, dominicano, cubano, I just want to say, te quiero decir que la gente en Cuba están sufriendo mucho, que luchar para la gente cubana. We have to fight for the Cuban people. We did a show yesterday with Natalie, and man, I loved it. It was great talking about these issues. We cannot be afraid. And why we can't be afraid? Because as U.S. Americans, if you're American, we are protected under the U.S. Constitution of freedom of speech. Okay? Freedom of speech. And even though even that is limited, I'm causing no harm. I'm just sharing what I'm learning. Okay? So if anyone is watching this channel that's feels challenged or feels threatened, hey man, this is tAiNoFuNhOuSe. We're here to have fun. And a lot of stuff right now is not fun. Especially wars and battles. You know, there's a reason why our ancestors had tribal councils. Part of the tribal council mentality was the grandmothers, the elders, the leadership will get together and avoid wars. In the Taino way, we played the Batu game. You know, the Aztecs, the Maya, up in North America, they had the hand games. Let me tell you, son, it was always about competition, but not to kill. Very important. Counting coup, but it wasn't. The original concept was not to kill. And a lot of people have that mentality, understanding. Totally wrong. So I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. This is Smoke Signal News. I am your anchor, Sana Cody, from the cyber world. You take care wherever you are, and please join me. Give me those positive thoughts. No war. No